She had 43 more deliveries after his. She never made a single one. Because when the door swung open, he was already on the floor, bleeding, silent, and holding two babies like they were the only thing in the world worth dying for. The rain had been falling since 4 in the morning. Mia Jong knew this because she hadn't slept. She'd been awake since 3:50, listening to the water hammer her apartment's single window, mentally calculating whether her ancient Honda could survive the puddles on Route 9 without stalling again. It had stalled twice last week. Both times she'd sat there in the dark, hands on the wheel, breathing slowly, telling herself the same thing she always told herself. Keep going. Just keep going. She was 26 years old and she worked 2 jobs. 3, if you counted the freelance accounting she did on weekends for a dry cleaner on 5th who paid her in cash and occasionally in steamed dumplings. Her primary job was dispatch coordinator at a mid-sized logistics company, which sounded impressive until you understood that it meant she sat in a beige cubicle answering phones for 8 hours and then, because the salary wasn't enough, she picked up evening delivery shifts for a courier app called SwiftDrop. SwiftDrop was not glamorous. The uniform was a yellow rain jacket that made her look like a distressed traffic cone. The app gave her a rating out of 5 stars and customers could dock her a star for being slow, for ringing the doorbell too many times, for ringing it too few times, for existing imperfectly in their general vicinity. Her rating was 4.7. She was proud of this in a way she couldn't fully explain. Tonight, she had been assigned 44 deliveries across a 6-hour window. It was ambitious. The rain made it cruel. She started in the flatlands near the warehouse district and worked her way up, boxed meals, a birthday cake sealed in plastic, someone's prescription medication, a box of wine, 2 sets of noise-canceling headphones. She moved efficiently, the way she did everything, head down, purpose forward, no wasted motion. Her sneakers were already soaked through. She didn't let herself think about that. Delivery 31 brought her downtown, to the Glass Tower district where the buildings seemed to compete with each other for height and indifference. She had only been to this neighborhood a handful of times. It felt like a different city, quieter, colder, the streets wide and almost empty, the lobbies behind every glass door glowing with warm gold light that seemed designed specifically to remind you that you were outside. The order was flagged as high priority. The app had placed a small red diamond next to the address, which SwiftDrop used to indicate premium customers, people who tipped well, who expected punctuality, who had subscribed to the platinum tier for reasons Mia didn't fully understand because the service itself was identical, you just paid more for it. The building was called the Harian. It was 40 stories of black glass and brushed steel and the kind of architectural confidence that doesn't need a sign bigger than a whisper. Mia pulled up out front, checked the address on the app, penthouse, level 40, unit PH, 1, and then checked it again, because sometimes the app glitched. It wasn't glitching. She grabbed the delivery bag from the passenger seat. It was heavier than usual, insulated, sealed, carrying what the order description listed simply as private medical supplies, handle with care. No restaurant name. No food items. Just that. Mia had learned not to ask questions about these kinds of orders. You delivered. You got your rating. You moved on. The lobby doorman was not at his post. That was the first thing she noticed, and she filed it away somewhere in the back of her mind without consciously deciding to. There was a desk, a phone, a coat folded neatly over a chair, but no person. The lobby itself was immaculate. Marble floors the color of pale bone, a floral arrangement the size of a small child on the reception desk, elevator doors polished to a mirror sheen. She pressed the call button. The elevator arrived immediately, silently, as though it had been waiting. On the ride up, Mia checked her phone. She had a message from her mother, a voice note, 4 minutes long, which meant it was either very good news or a detailed list of complaints about her cousin's recent life choices. She would listen to it later. She had 23 minutes left in this delivery window. She needed to be back in her car in 12. The elevator opened on the 40th floor. There was only one door. Drop at door, no signature required, the app instruction read. Do not knock. Leave and confirm delivery. She walked to the door. It was heavy, matte black, no visible hinges, the kind of door that exists to communicate that whatever is behind it is not for you. She set the bag down. Opened the app to confirm. Her thumb hovered over the screen. And then she heard it. A sound so small she almost missed it under the white noise of the rain and the building's climate system and the distant muffled city beyond the glass. So small, and yet so enormous that when her brain registered what it was, her entire body went still. A baby crying. And then, underneath it, barely audible, like a man trying to hold something massive together with nothing but the force of his will, a second sound. A man. Breathing. Ragged. Wrong. Mia stood completely motionless for 3 full seconds. Then she knocked. Nothing. She knocked again, harder, with the flat of her hand. Hello? Is someone, are you okay in there? The crying intensified. 2 babies now. Unmistakably 2. The harmony of their distress was impossible and heartbreaking, a sound that bypassed logic entirely and grabbed something ancient and instinctive in the center of Mia's chest. The man's breathing got louder. Or maybe she just got closer, pressing her ear to the cold matte black of the door. Hello. The door swung open. Not because someone opened it from the inside. Because it hadn't been fully latched. And Mia Zhang, 26 years old, delivery rating 4.7, accountant of a dry cleaner's books, daughter of a woman who sent 4-minute voice notes, stepped across a threshold she had no business crossing, and saw him. He was on the floor. Enormous. That was the first thing. Even collapsed against the island of the most beautiful kitchen she had ever seen, he was enormous, long legs, broad shoulders, a frame that suggested a body built not in a gym but through something harder and older. He was Korean, maybe mid-30s, dark hair matted against his forehead. He was wearing a black dress shirt, though calling it that now felt absurd because the entire left side of it was soaked through with blood, dark, too much of it, spreading outward from somewhere beneath his arm like a shadow growing. And he was holding 2 babies. 1 in each arm. Newborns, tiny, red-faced, furious with hunger or fear or the simple unbearable fact of being new to a world that had already proven itself dangerous. He held them against his chest with both arms wrapped around them, even though holding them clearly cost him something enormous, even though every breath he drew was shallow and sharp. His eyes found her. Dark. Still. Burning with something that was not quite pain and not quite pride and not quite a plea, but some impossible combination of all 3. He said one word. Low. Accented. Non-negotiable. Help. If this story is already hitting different, drop a comment below. Tell us, would you have walked in? Let us know. For a moment, just a moment, Mia's body forgot what her brain was telling it to do. Her brain was saying, you are a delivery driver. This is not your emergency. Call 911 and back away from the door and get back in your car and do your remaining 13 deliveries. Her body was already inside the apartment. She didn't decide to cross the threshold. Her legs simply carried her, because the sound of 2 babies crying in a room with a bleeding man was a sound that the rational part of the human mind is simply not equipped to argue against. Okay, she heard herself say. Her voice came out steadier than she felt. Okay, I'm here. I'm here. She dropped to her knees beside him, bag still over her shoulder, rain jacket still dripping on his floor. Up close, the wound was worse than it had looked from the doorway. High on his left side, just below the ribs, a gunshot wound, she was almost certain of it, though she had never seen one in her life outside of television. The blood had soaked through his shirt and pooled beneath him on the marble, and he was pressing his elbow into the wound in a way that looked like it was the only thing keeping him functional. How long, she asked. How long have you been on the floor? His jaw tightened. 20 minutes. Maybe 30. Did you call? No. The flatness of it stopped her. Not I couldn't, not my phone died, just, no. A decision. She looked at him and she understood something without being told. This man had not called for help because he did not, for reasons she couldn't begin to know, want official help to arrive. She looked at the babies. They were wrapped, well wrapped, she noticed, even in crisis, someone had taken care. 2 small bundles, faces scrunched and furious, heads barely the size of her fist. Newborns, truly, days old, maybe a week. A boy and a girl, she thought, though she couldn't have said why she was so certain. Are they hurt? She asked. Something moved across his face. The first crack in the stone. No. There, no. Hungry. They need, he stopped. Swallowed. There's formula. Counter. Mia looked up. The kitchen counter was a slab of white quartz the length of a small runway, and yes, there it was, a can of infant formula, 2 bottles, a kettle that had long since finished boiling and gone cold. Okay, she said again. I'm going to. Don't let go of them. His voice came out rough. Not a request. She met his eyes. I'm not going to let go of them. I need you to hold on for 30 seconds while I get the bottles. Can you do that? A long pause. Then, barely, yes. She stood. Moved to the counter. Her hands were shaking now, she could feel it, a fine tremor running from her fingers up to her elbows, the kind of shaking that happens when your body understands the situation before your mind has given it permission to react. She measured formula by feel, filled both bottles with water from the kettle, still warm enough, barely, and shook them with the mechanical focus of someone who has decided that falling apart is simply not an option available to her right now. When she came back, she found him exactly as she'd left him. Eyes on the door. One arm still tight around both babies, his other hand now pressing harder against his side. I need to look at that wound, she said. Feed them first. She almost argued. The medical instinct, borrowed from every first aid course she'd half paid attention to and every medical drama she'd ever watched, said bleeding first, everything else second. But something in his face made her stop. The way he was looking at the babies. The way holding them seemed to be the thing keeping him conscious. She sat cross-legged on the marble floor beside him. Took one baby carefully, the girl, she decided, and offered her the bottle. The infant latched with the desperate efficiency of someone who has been waiting much too long. The crying stopped. In its place, small, rhythmic, urgent swallowing sounds. The man's exhale was almost imperceptible. Mia looked at him. He was watching the baby drink with an expression she could not name, not quite tenderness and not quite grief and not quite wonder. Something that lived in the country between all three, in a place that had no flag and no language. The other one, he said quietly. She took the boy next. Same desperate latch, same instant quiet. She held one in each arm, bottles propped, and for a surreal, suspended moment the only sounds in the 40-story penthouse were the rain on the glass and the soft sounds of 2 very new humans eating. Your name, she said. Not unkindly. Just needing an anchor. A pause so long she thought he wouldn't answer. Kang, he said finally. Seo Kang. The name landed with a weight she didn't understand yet. She would understand later, much later, when she would search it on her phone and sit very still for a long time. But right now it was just a name. A man on a floor. 2 babies. A spreading pool of blood that was not getting smaller. I'm Mia, she said. And Kang, I need you to let me look at the wound now. The babies are eating. They're fine. Let me help you. His eyes moved to her face. She held his gaze steadily, because she understood somehow that this was a man who read people through their eyes, who had built his entire life on the ability to judge in a single glance whether something was a threat or a mercy. She let him look as long as he needed. Finally, he moved his arm away from his side. The wound was through and through, she could see that much once she'd gotten his shirt open. Entry and exit, both sides. The bleeding had slowed, which she knew enough to understand was both good and not entirely good. She found a first aid kit in the kitchen, enormous, professional grade, the kind that suggested this was not the first time emergencies had occurred in this apartment, and she packed the wounds with gauze with hands that had stopped shaking because she had given them a task and tasks were something Mia Jong understood. You need a hospital, she said. No. Kang. No hospital. His voice had dropped but the authority in it hadn't. There is someone. A number in my phone. Black case, on the counter. Call the contact listed as Dr. H. She found the phone. Cracked screen, still functional. She found the contact and dialed without questioning it, because she had already passed the point where questioning things was available to her. A woman answered on the second ring. Spoke in Korean first, then switched seamlessly to English when Mia replied. Calm, clipped, clinical. She asked 3 questions, location, nature of wound, blood loss estimate. Mia answered all 3. 20 minutes, the woman said, and hung up. Mia set the phone down and looked at the man on her floor, not her floor, his floor, this gleaming penthouse that felt like a museum to a life she couldn't imagine, and she thought, 20 minutes is a long time. She sat back down beside him. Picked both babies back up. The bottles were almost empty. They have names, she asked. The crack in the stone again. Wider this time. Jisoo, he said. And Juno. Which is which? He looked at the bundles in her arms. And for the first time, not a smile exactly, but the shadow of one, passing across his face like light through storm clouds. Jisoo is already giving you a look, he said. That's her. She was born arguing. Mia glanced down. The girl, Jisoo, had finished her bottle and was staring up at Mia with the particular focused intensity of someone who has opinions and is merely waiting for the vocabulary. She's going to be terrifying, Mia said. Yes, Kang said. It sounded like pride. It sounded like the most unguarded thing he had said in years. What would you have done, walked away or stayed? Tell us in the comments right now. Dr. H arrived in 19 minutes. She was a small woman, 50s, silver-streaked hair pulled back tight, a medical bag that looked like a piece of expensive luggage. She spoke to Kang in Korean when she came through the door, quick and low, and he answered in Korean, and whatever passed between them in those first 30 seconds was something Mia was not part of and did not pretend to be. Then the doctor looked at Mia, at the delivery jacket, the soaked sneakers, the two infants still balanced in her arms, and something shifted in her expression. Not suspicion. Something closer to recalibration. You called, she said. He couldn't, Mia said simply. The doctor worked quickly, efficiently, and Mia stayed out of the way, moved to the living room, which was all floor-to-ceiling windows and dark wood and silence, and she sat on a low couch that probably cost more than her car and she held two sleeping newborns and listened to the rain and tried to understand what was happening. She was failing at the understanding part. She was a delivery driver. She had 43 more stops after this one. Her rating was going to take a hit tonight, she could already see it, the little star ticking down from 4.7, and she was sitting in a penthouse holding a mafia boss's newborn twins while a private doctor extracted gauze from his gunshot wound in the kitchen. She pressed her nose to the top of Juno's head. He smelled like babies smell, that particular scent that is somehow both new and ancient, something the body recognizes even before the mind does. His tiny fist had closed around her index finger while he slept and he had no intention of letting go. Okay, she thought. Okay. The doctor came to find her 20 minutes later. He's stable. He'll need rest. He lost significant blood but the wound missed anything critical, he was fortunate. She paused. Or someone has poor aim. Mia didn't respond to that. He wants to speak with you, the doctor added. Of course he does. She carried both babies back to the kitchen. The doctor had gotten Kang up off the floor and onto a long sectional sofa that ran the length of the adjoining living room. He had a fresh bandage wrapped around his torso, visible through a clean shirt someone had found. His color was still wrong, gray around the edges, the particular pallor of significant blood loss, but his eyes were alert. Sharp. Watching her come toward him with his children in her arms with an expression she still couldn't name. She set them down carefully beside him on the sofa. Arranged them in the way she'd seen in a video once, side by side, like two small parentheses. Then she stood up and said, I need to get back to my deliveries. It came out almost believably. Kang said nothing for a moment. He was looking at his children. Then he looked at her. Sit down, he said. Please. The plea surprised her more than anything else that had happened tonight. She sat. You didn't run, he said. When you saw me. I thought about it. But you didn't. There were babies. He nodded slowly, like this confirmed something. Most people would have run. Called the police. Filed a report. Deleted the memory. His voice was measured, careful, each word placed with intention. You stayed. You packed the wound. You fed them. A pause. Why? Mia looked at Jisoo and Juno, sleeping with the bottomless commitment that only newborns can manage. Because someone had to, she said. And I was the one who was there. Kang was quiet for a long moment. The delivery, he said. That bag, the medical supplies. I ordered them 3 days ago. For after the birth. A brief, humorless exhale that was almost a laugh. Things did not go according to plan. I noticed. Their mother, he began, and stopped. Something moved through him, something enormous and silent, like a ship changing course deep underwater, the motion invisible from the surface. She is not here. She won't be coming back. Mia didn't ask. She understood that some sentences contain everything that needs to be said. They're 4 days old, he continued. I have a staff, a housekeeper, a nurse I hired. They were both sent away tonight. When the situation became, he stopped again. I didn't expect the visit I received. Someone shot you. Yes. Someone who knew your address. His eyes moved to her face. You're perceptive. I'm an accountant, she said. We notice details. Something in his expression shifted, not quite amusement, but adjacent to it. You're a delivery driver. I'm an accountant who delivers things at night, she corrected. There's a difference. He studied her. What's your name? Mia. Mia Zhang. A flicker of something. Zhang. My grandparents were from Busan, she said. Before you ask. I wasn't going to ask. Everyone asks. The room settled into a quiet that was not entirely uncomfortable. Outside, the rain had eased slightly, from a downpour to a steady murmur. Juno made a small sound in his sleep and curled tighter, and Kang's hand moved automatically, hovering an inch above the baby's back before retreating. Mia noticed. You can touch them, she said quietly. I know. You're not. I know, he said again. Not sharp. Something else entirely. She understood then. He was afraid. Not of the wound, not of whoever had shot him, not of the countless things that a man in his position presumably had to fear. He was afraid of this, of 2 tiny fragile humans who needed him to be something he didn't know if he was capable of being. They were born 4 days ago, she said carefully. And in 4 days, whoever was supposed to be caring for them went away, and someone shot you, and you were alone on that floor for 30 minutes, and you held them the entire time. She paused. You're already doing it. He looked at her. You're already their father, she said simply. That part already happened. He asked her to stay. Not in a commanding way, not the way she'd imagined a man like him asked for things. He asked the way someone asks when they are stripped of everything that usually protects them and have run out of alternatives. One night, he said. The nurse will be back in the morning. My housekeeper. I just need. Yes, she said. Before he finished. Because Juno still had her finger and because Jisoo was making faces in her sleep and because there are some situations in life that don't require deliberation. She texted Swiftdrop to close out her shift. 3 stars tonight, at least. Maybe 2. She would deal with it. She called her mother back, got the voicemail, left a message, I'm okay. I'm helping someone. I'll explain later. Don't worry. Which was the kind of message that guarantees maximum worry, but there was no version of tonight's true explanation that would have produced less. Around midnight, when both babies had been fed again and changed, Kang directed her to a nursery that had clearly been prepared with intense care and expense, a room that was perfect and waiting and too quiet. She came back and found him sitting up, watching the rain. Tell me something true, she said. She didn't know why she said it. She was tired, and when she was tired her filters got thin. He didn't seem surprised by the question. Which true thing? Whatever you want. A long pause. I have spent 15 years being afraid of very specific things, he said slowly. Rivals. Law enforcement. Betrayal. The usual fears. Very manageable fears, because I understood them. He glanced toward the nursery. I have never been afraid of something I loved before. I don't know what to do with it. The honesty of it sat between them like something fragile and irreplaceable. Nobody does, Mia said. You just keep going. By 2 in the morning, Kang had fallen into a heavy, medication-assisted sleep on the sofa, and Mia had established a system. She'd found a baby monitor in the nursery, expensive, with a camera, and placed both twins in their bassinets, side by side, because they slept better that way, because 4 days was long enough to understand that they'd spent months together in the dark and were not yet ready to be apart. She watched them on the monitor from a chair she'd pulled into the hallway, phone in her hand, room quiet. She should have left hours ago. She knew this. There was no version of staying that made straightforward sense. This man was dangerous, not in a manner that felt like a movie, but in a real, specific, documentable way. She had seen the gun on the kitchen counter, half hidden under a dish towel but unmistakably there. She had seen the way Dr. H had moved through the apartment without asking a single question about what had happened, the practiced normalcy of someone long accustomed to operating in the margins of official life. She had seen the way Kang's eyes had tracked the door for the first 2 hours, alert even through pain. She knew what she was in the middle of. And she was still sitting in this hallway at 2 in the morning because 2 babies were sleeping 6 feet away and they had decided, with the absolute authority that only the very small can exercise, that she was safe. At 2:17, Kang's phone lit up on the coffee table. She could see it from the hallway. Couldn't see the name, but the phone lit up and buzzed twice and went dark, and then lit up and buzzed again. A pattern. Someone who knew him well enough to know how to signal urgency without a voicemail. She went to the sofa. Kang was asleep, genuinely, deeply, the sleep of blood loss and medication and trauma metabolized. The phone lit up a third time. She looked at the screen. The contact name was a single character in Korean she couldn't read. Below it, a text in English. They'll come back. Tonight or tomorrow. You need to not be there. She stood very still. Then she woke him up. Gently, firmly, the way you wake someone when there isn't time to do it gently. He came awake fast, whatever he was, he didn't emerge slowly from sleep. His eyes were open and focused within a second, finding her face. Your phone, she said. She showed him the message. She watched him read it. Watched the calculation happen behind his eyes, rapid, familiar, the math of someone who has made decisions like this many times before. He sat up slowly, one hand pressing his side. I have a place, he said. An hour outside the city. Can you drive? No. Then I'll drive, she said. He looked at her. Really looked at her, long enough that she felt it as something almost physical, a quality of attention she wasn't used to being on the receiving end of. You understand what you're involving yourself in, he said. It wasn't a question. I understand that someone is going to come here, she said, and that you have 2 4-day-old babies in that room, and that you are in no condition to carry both of them and also defend yourself, and that I am currently the only other person here. She held his gaze. Do you want to keep debating this, or do you want to pack a bag? Another long moment. The safe, he said. Behind the painting in the bedroom. I'll give you the combination. There's a phone inside, new, clean, and a set of car keys. The car is in space B7 in the basement. You'll need the key card on the kitchen counter. And you? She asked. I'll get the babies. She stopped. You can barely. I'll get my children, he said quietly, and you get the car. She let it go. It took them 11 minutes to be ready. She didn't ask what he put in the bag he packed one-handed while she carried both infants in their carriers. She didn't ask about the phone he made a call on in the elevator, speaking low and quick in Korean. She pulled the car, black, understated, the kind of expensive that tries not to look expensive, out of space B7 and around to the building's side exit, and he came through the door with both carriers and a face set like stone, pale and determined, and she helped strap the babies in with a competence she was half surprised to discover she had. She drove. He told her the route in short, specific directions and then leaned his head back and said nothing for 20 minutes, and she let the silence be what it was, not empty, not uncomfortable. Something earned. At some point, 40 minutes out, the rain finally easing, the highway stretching out silver and empty, Juno started to fuss. A low, building complaint from the back seat. Jisoo's still asleep, Mia said quietly, watching the mirror. She's going to be insufferable about that in about 20 years. She heard it. Faint. Almost imperceptible. Kang laughed. Not much. Not long. But it was real, a sound that seemed to surprise him as much as it did her, something dislodged from somewhere deep, like the first sound a house makes after an earthquake when the walls realize they're still standing. She really will, he said. They drove the rest of the way in something that was not quite silence and not quite conversation but some third thing that Mia didn't have a word for, and outside the rain finally stopped, and the first gray edge of dawn began to suggest itself at the horizon, and behind them, in two small carriers, Jisoo slept and Juno eventually stopped fussing and slept too. The safe house was a farmhouse. That was the only word for it, modest, white, tucked behind a tree line off a road that didn't seem to appear on standard navigation apps. There were people there. Two men who came out when the car pulled up, who took Kang's bag, who communicated in the wordless shorthand of long-established trust. They looked at Mia once, briefly, and then looked at Kang, and he said something short in Korean and they nodded and that was the end of it. Inside, it was warm. Lived in. A fire someone had prepared in advance. A kitchen stocked. 2 rooms upstairs, one of which had a crib, had 2 cribs, side by side, which made something tighten unexpectedly in Mia's throat, because someone had known. Someone had thought to prepare for them. She settled the babies. They went down without protest, the particular surrender of the truly exhausted, and she stood over their cribs for a moment longer than was strictly necessary. Then she went back downstairs. Kang was in the kitchen, sitting at the table, a cup of tea in front of him that he hadn't touched. The men had gone, somewhere outside, she assumed, doing whatever it was they did. The house was quiet except for the fire and the last few drops of rain from the eaves. She sat across from him. "You should sleep," she said. "You should go home," he said. "I will." Neither of them moved. "I owe you a debt," he said. "I don't say that lightly. In my world, a debt is." "You don't owe me anything," she said. He looked at her steadily. "Mia. I mean it. I stayed because I wanted to. Because they needed someone." She paused. "Because you needed someone." Silence. "I'm not a good man," he said finally. "I want to be clear about that. I'm not going to revise the facts because of tonight. What I am, what I've done, none of that changes." "I know." "Then why?" "Because what you are to them is going to be different," she said quietly. "That's allowed. People are more than one thing." She looked toward the ceiling, toward the room where Jisoo and Juno slept. "Those two are going to need a father. And you're the one who held them on that floor for 30 minutes when you were losing blood. You're it. That's already decided." Kang was quiet for a long time. Long enough that the fire shifted and settled and the room grew slightly brighter with early morning. "I'm going to need help," he said. "Professional help. A proper nurse, a nanny, the housekeeper back. Everything that should have been in place." A pause. "And I'm going to need," he stopped. Seemed to weigh something. "The security situation will be resolved within a week. It's being handled. When it is, things will be different. Calmer." Mia nodded. "I'd like you to come back," he said. "Not as a delivery driver. Not under any obligation. I'd like you to come back because," he stopped again, and she realized she was watching a man who had spent 15 years never having to struggle for words suddenly having to struggle. "Because Jisoo already has opinions about you, and Juno won't let go of your finger, and I don't think I should ignore the judgment of either of them." A sound came out of Mia that was almost a laugh and almost something else. "I run 4.7 stars, she said. "I'll take it." She looked at him across the table. This enormous, dangerous, blood-soaked, terrified man who had held his children on a marble floor and been afraid to touch them and laughed at something she'd said about his daughter in a car at 4 in the morning and was now asking her to come back in the only way he apparently knew how to ask for things, directly, quietly, without dressing it up as anything other than what it was. "I'll come back," she said. "But I'm bringing food. Real food, not," she gestured at the Spartan kitchen. "Whatever this situation is." Something warm moved across his face. It looked like it was becoming a more regular visitor. "I'll allow it," he said. She left at 6:15 in the morning. One of the men drove her back to the city in a car she didn't ask about, and she sat in the back seat watching the dawn come up gold and new over the highway, and she thought about the 43 deliveries she hadn't made and the rating points she'd probably lost and her mother's 4-minute voicemail and the dry cleaner who would need his books done by Sunday. She thought about a girl named Jisoo who'd been born arguing. She thought about a boy named Juno who held on. She called her mother when the car reached her neighborhood. Her mother picked up on the first ring because of course she did. "I got your message," her mother said immediately. "Are you okay? Who were you helping? What happened? Why does your voice sound like that?" "I'm okay," Mia said. "I promise." "You don't sound okay. I sound tired." "There's a difference." "Mia." "Mom." She watched her building come into view, ordinary, a little tired-looking, home. "I found someone who needed help. So I helped them. That's all." Her mother was quiet for a moment, in that way she had when she was deciding whether to accept a short answer or pursue the full length of it. She said, softly, "You've always done that. Since you were small. If something needed help, you just—" "I know. That's a good thing, Mia." "I know," she said again. She went upstairs. She showered. She stood in her small kitchen in dry clothes and made coffee and looked out her ordinary window at the ordinary morning and felt something she couldn't fully name, not quite happiness, not quite the relief of safety, but something wide and still, like standing in a field after rain when everything smells clean and the light is that particular shade of early gold that doesn't last. Her phone buzzed. Unknown number. A text, just 6 words. "Jisoo is already giving someone a look." Attached was a photo, grainy, close, clearly taken by someone who was not accustomed to photographing babies. But clear enough. Jisoo, wide awake in her crib, staring at whoever had taken the picture with an expression of focused, magnificent skepticism. Mia laughed. Out loud, fully, in her empty kitchen, the sound surprising her. She typed back, "She's going to run things someday." The reply came quickly, for a man who had lost considerable blood 12 hours ago. "I know. I'm already afraid." She was still smiling when she finally lay down and closed her eyes. She had 43 deliveries she hadn't made. She had a 4.7 rating that was probably now a 4.4. She had a mother who would require a full explanation and a dry cleaner's books due Sunday and a life that was, by every ordinary measure, exactly as complicated as it had been yesterday. And somewhere an hour outside the city, in a warm farmhouse behind a tree line, 2 very small people were sleeping side by side in matching cribs, having survived their first week in a world that had already tried its best to make things difficult for them. They had held on. And so would she. If this story moved you, if you found yourself holding your breath in that hallway, in that car, in that kitchen at dawn, leave a comment and tell us which moment got you. Was it the floor? The laugh in the car? Those last 6 words? We read every single one.